First, I'm surprised to see so many people here after, especially after the gala. I still see some speakers who did drink a bit more than I thought. And this year, I don't know why, but people seem to be much fitter and much slimmer. I don't know if it's a GLP-1 that you use, and if you are brave enough, raise your hand if you use a GLP-1, but I don't know, people look so much better and more hair on their head compared to last year. So today I want to talk a little bit about translating to clinics, and that was really a last moment title. I only had like 30 seconds to choose the title, and I added now epigenetic reprogramming. And why I want to say that is, first, aging is a real big problem, and by 2050, 1 in 6 people will be over 65, and now I believe 95% of these people have at least one chronic condition. So it is a terrible burden, not in the sense that we are going to die, but that we are not going to live well as we age, and well, also that we are going to die. And there is this, here we go. So the current medicine is really reactive and targets only the symptoms. And this is something that well, when I started being interested in biogerontology over 20 years ago, it was really the part that made me interested is that this aging research is not looking only at the symptoms, it's looking at what drives these symptoms, and in a way redefining disease, redefining how we could potentially tackle disease. Obviously, Aubrey de Grey has been a very pioneering, but so were many other people, and this has been a little bit what drove me out of doing medicine. And I think my parents are not so happy about that, but it's also what made me see the potential of tackling disease, of helping people in a way that would be much better, because there is this amazing potential in aging research. And when I'm coming to this conference every year, and most of the conference, but this is by so far the best one. We see these amazing presentations, we see these amazing breakthrough, and there is so much in this research that is worth bringing to the people, that can help people who may not have the chance otherwise. And that's really what led us to start 109. And 109 is really, our goal is to realize that potential in aging research, to bring the value out of all this research to patients. And how we did this? Well, we started, especially in the last 5-6 years, there was this growing evidence in a small subfield of reprogramming, in this partial or transient reprogramming, which was maybe a bit niche and a little bit of a scientific curiosity. But when it's coupled with the advance in sequencing, with this cheaper sequencing, and this understanding of what's the epigenome, what's cell signaling, it started to germ into a little flower, at least inside of my head. My wife says I'm crazy, but I really believe that this was a way to do a potential this factory reset, much like when your computer is too cluttered, you might just do a factory reset and remove all the junks that you have in it, plus also all your good documents, but that's another problem. So epigenetics, and when I call this epigenetic reprogramming, because I think it's just nicer than partial and transient reprogramming, and maybe captures a little bit more of what it essentially does. And to explain what it does, well, epigenetics is really the modification to the DNA that regulates gene activity. However, it does not change the DNA sequence. In that sense, it's how the cell functions and what it really does to be what it is. And these modifications are the things that can turn genes on and off, and then can influence all this machinery, which proteins are made and which ones are not. And there is something that is becoming a bit more evident recently. Some of the work of David Sinclair and his information theory of aging might be one of those things, but there is this epigenetic erosion that is that gradual loss and disruption of the normal epigenetic pattern. And as we age, but also through disease, there is this loss of coherence between all the cells, there is this loss of homeostasis, and it is driven intrinsically, extrinsically, from outside, from inside, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of debate what is more relevant or not, but at the end of the day, all these things are going to damage this epigenome, and that's going to lead to some very unpleasant things like this increased variability in gene expression between cells. So our cells, they don't work together, they don't work in unison, they just do something a little bit different between each other. And that's maybe one of these sort of, this is what essential inflammation is. On another side, you have this loss of cellular identity and function. The cells, they forget, or maybe partially, they forget that they're supposed to do this or that. For example, a skin cell might make a little bit of something that a heart cell does or a brain cell does. And this loss of identity obviously can be compounding and can compound very quickly. Some genes that are normally supposed to be silent are being activated in many autoimmune conditions, in things like FSHD, and maybe genes that are supposed to be activated become a bit more silent. And altogether, it's going to contribute to that age-related decline, to disease, to the loss of resilience that we see with aging. So what we saw as a potential in that epigenetic reprogramming is really this erosion affects so many things, not just in aging, but really in disease, whether it's in cancer, whether it's in autoimmune disorders, in this immunodeficiency or immunosenescence, in neurodegenerative conditions, and many, many other conditions. So there is a link. Now, maybe one of the problems with science is that we have a lot of domain specialists. However, there is, unlike medicine where you have a general practitioner or a generalist, you don't really have that in science. So we tend to look on a very, in a very narrow way, and connecting the dots seems to be a little bit difficult. But then if we take a little bit of time, there are some links. And obviously, some researchers might say we need a bit more research. We are not sure about all those things. But on the other hand, we need some grants, especially that, I think, and funding. But there is definitely a link. And I think as a biotechnology company, we're in a position where we can explore those links, where we can decide to look at at connecting these different domains, at connecting these very, very small and very narrow fields into a global understanding of aging, of disease, where in a way we can predict with a little bit of accuracy, not terribly well, but we can predict a little bit what's going to happen. And well, if we look at the partial reprogramming, what we saw is it's going to affect senescence. It's going to affect metabolic disease. This partial reprogramming has potential to address multiple cardiovascular disorders, some immune disorders, aging in general. I should have started with aging. Things like ovarian aging, infertility, cancer, or even neurodegenerative disease. So how does epigenetic reprogramming, how does partial reprogramming work? I like to say it's a little bit like in a computer, you do a factory reset. When your computer is when it's getting a bit slow, when it doesn't work very well, you have different options. You can install an antivirus, that's like getting a drug, or you can, and that's going to help a little bit, but for a short time, and is not really going to address the issue. You're just going to make the system a bit more cluttered, maybe remove some of the bad stuff, but then you are going to get this advertisement to pay for your subscription, etc. So I don't like to use antiviruses, but please don't hack my computer. Then you could do a factory reset. And what I like about the factory reset is that you remove everything that's, well, you really remove and you restart that operating system. And in the context of genetics and the epigenome, it would be just like you put your cell back to its original state when it was first the cell of its kind, when the skin cell was the first skin cell after it's coming from a germline. And well, in theory, that sounds very nice. Does it work? That was a big question. And myself and my chief science officer, we just did this work in practical garage. I mean, if university labs can count as a garage, to really validate those papers, to look, does this make sense? Is it just a nice publication, or can it be replicated? But also, can it really capture some of that potential that might be out there? And well, epigenetic reprogramming can really help with rejuvenating cells. I mean, at least it's going to preserve their unique role if it's done correctly. It can restore the cellular function, this resilience, as the cell, well, as the cell gets old, it's not going to do its job very well, and especially it's going to lose its resilience to injury, to stress. It's not going to protect its DNA as well as it did earlier. And it can help with regeneration and wound healing. I believe I heard that if you were to cut a baby's finger off, I hope no one does this, it would practically regrow. However, that the same cannot be said of an older person. And there is also some potential in extending health span and lifespan, and there were multiple lifespan studies done on, especially on mice in partial reprogramming. So what we looked at is, okay, just make sure. So one of the things we looked at is this microvasculature, which was, I think, something reasonable to target, something that you could make it a little bit safer using smaller doses and so on. And we used our 3D models to grow things like the blood-brain barrier, or just vessels that we typically see in the brain. Those vessels that are fully functional, that are perfusable, that are mechanically exactly the same as normal vessels. And doing a lot of live imaging, and using these old cells, young cells, reprogrammed cells, we began to see that, well, we can really restore completely the ability of old cells to make young blood vessels. And well, some of the other things is we've been able to look at how we can deliver this reprogramming, how our liposomes, for example, using our mRNA drug, can go into the right cells. And we've been looking also whether we can get into the brain, and using animal cells, and now we're also doing using human cells. And it was a bit tricky to adapt these things, the reprogramming, some intervention like cell therapy or mRNA delivery does not always translate very well in those organoid models, but we've been able to help that process. And some of the very cool things we saw, for example, in this vasculature, is that on the left you have the young fibroblasts and other cells, and in the second row you have these old fibroblasts where the vasculature is not perfusable. The red, which is dextran, but you can think of it as blood, is just not flowing, is leaking. And that's also what we see in the human brain, this degradation of the blood-brain barrier, the leakage, the things that are going to drive this inflammation in the brain, that are going to make some of the cells in the brain super excited and just crazy, and have these compounding things that can lead to, for example, vascular dementia, to Alzheimer's, to Parkinson, and more. And when we applied different type of reprogramming using different factors, we noticed we could partially restore this ability of the old cells. So in the third column, these are the same old cells that have been treated. And after, I believe, 3 days, they started to make, to make the blood vessels more functional. And using this mRNA delivery, it seemed to work so well that the new vessels were practically indistinguishable from, the old vessels were practically indistinguishable from the young fibroblasts. And that was, that is amazing. And we looked a little bit whether this keeps on after you do multiple passages, whether, and how the cells fare in different conditions. And it was one of the very promising areas, but it's, to be honest, that's not the most exciting thing I wanted to talk to you about. However, the most exciting thing I wanted to talk to has sadly been redacted. I've been told that if I were to say any word about it, I'm going to get fired or spanked by my wife. So, but what I can say in general is that we are working in neurodegeneration, ovarian aging, cardiology, FSHD. We work also in wound healing because I think there's some cosmetic applications, and people have been telling me they just want their skin to be nicer. Living longer is optional, but they have to look great. So there is a huge potential. We are seeing some really amazing data in there, and I'm hoping by next year everything will be safe to be shown. And in the meantime, I want to talk about another problem that I'm seeing a little bit, not too much, it's getting better, is that, well, no single lab can solve aging. And we have so many labs, we have so many companies in this conference. And some of them are working together, but are all of you working together? Are all of you sharing what you are doing? And I like to think that we have the same goal, that what we do is motivated by the impact we can have on patients' lives, that we do science not just because it's fun and we like getting grants, but also because we want to bring something out of that science to benefit at least ourselves, our loved ones, our family, friends, and perhaps everyone at large. And it's, well, everything is very compartmentalized, and there is, I think, a little bit of lack of this patient-centric longevity, this patient-centric aging research. And I like to think that we are trying to pioneer longevity pragmatically, in the sense we really want to bring what's out there to the patient. And my question, or at least rhetorical question to you, is like, we have multiple companies. There was a talk from Life Bioscience. There is Retro Bioscience not this year, but you have Altos Lab. You have a few companies in partial reprogramming, and I'm just thinking, if we were to work together, if we were to pool what we do in a way that we can bring this potentially reprogramming to patients faster, but that's applicable to any other field that we have here. If we were to pool the things that we do together, don't we have a better chance? And what I see is that people, well, I guess I'm also guilty myself because I'm not showing you everything that we do, but there is this incentive, there is these things happening in here that stop us from really working together, from sharing. Perhaps it's a little bit of we want to be first, or we want to make sure that we have this biggest return on investment, not the others. Perhaps there is this bit that, okay, we are the ones that are going to solve the problem, not this other company. We don't care if it takes longer, but we want to be the ones to do it. But at the end of the day, you have people who have disease, you have people who are, I mean, everyone has a big disease, which is aging, and some of these people just cannot wait. And perhaps we ought to put a bit more effort in working together, in collaborating, in partnering, and really bringing what's out there to people, not just because it's fun, not just because we want more grants, but because we want to help people live longer and healthier. And I like to say, when people ask me what we do as a company, we don't deliver drugs, we don't deliver science, we really deliver health. And I'm thinking to change our logo to something like Amazon with a big smile, and our job is to deliver this health value to people. So what we did as a company, we launched 109 Biotechnologies last year. So we are running for about a year and a half, and we had a lot of momentum from having a team of practically 20 to 25 people to having our own labs, building our own labs and all the construction, all the headaches that go with it, having a clinic that goes together, to very recently having more offices, more lab space, and more clinics in China, and really having this partnership and collaboration to do these phase 1B trials in context of disease, especially in neurodegenerative conditions. And that's something which is super exciting, because in 6 to 12 months, we are already going to be in humans. And sure, we will have to do a bit of work in between, and even once we start, we are going to have to iterate for the product, a bit like a software. You want to have this version 1.1, 1.2, 1.21, etc., to get things better, safer, and instead of just working on those very difficult conditions, you can broaden by making your compound safer, by needing less of it, having a more effective dose. At the end of the day, you are going to be able to scale from difficult conditions to slightly less challenging conditions, until at last everyone, including all the regulators, are happy for you to bring it to the general population in context of aging. And in that way, probably the biggest partner that we're trying to work with are not so much investors, is not so much other companies, is really working with the regulatory, by working together with the FDA. I know some people like to complain, oh, this FDA or in UK, in other countries, always terrible, slow the things down, so expensive to bring on drugs. But I really think when you have the real value, when you bring the real value to the patients, the things are going to be quite smooth and, well, at least not as bumpy. And at the same time, my wife is also doing the longevity clinic, and perhaps that's one of the things. We had like 3 iterations, and we invested so much, and practically, I mean, wasted so much money just to figure out how to do a longevity clinic before there were longevity clinics. But again, there are lots of exciting things, and I think having a bit of having a bit of one foot into the clinical, if you're in research, put one foot into the clinical, just to know what's happening and to know how to connect things is very, very nice. And we built a team between our biotechnology and also our clinic. We have a team of over 30 people who are amazing and who are passionate and really bringing something very nice. And if they're watching, maybe here or remotely, well, a big thank you to them. And I hope that if any one of you is really interested, whether it's to collaborate, whether it's to invest, whether it's to join our team, well, to please reach out to us. And then I did want to put a sneak peek of what we are doing next. So, oh, what's going on? Okay. Well, I'm sorry, it will be for next year. Please don't scan the QR code. Okay. Thank you.